Lovely. Today's session is really focused around the breath. So last week's session was more to do with the relationship between the pelvis and the spine. And we're going to be thinking about the breath quite a lot today. So starting in an upright position, if you do have any padding on you or a block, that might work, a brick or a block, just anything to lift the sit bones. And then we can give ourselves a fairly easy position to start off with. So you want to ensure that your knees are dropping away from the hips. So ideally the knees are below the hips. But obviously we all look absolutely fine in Sukhasana, so that's great. But there's always the option of coming into kneeling, into Vajrasana. So we're beginning to arrive onto our mats, drawing our attention inwards. So when the awareness is very much in the mind, thinking about things, the thoughts, just begin to touch into that sense of interoception that is so strong in a yoga practice. Beginning to come into the body, noticing the breath. Relaxing those shoulders away from the ears. And relaxing the jaw. And indeed the process may be just noticing how that jaw is this morning. It's a very common relationship between our hips and our jaws. So just drawing that attention inwards. And you can have your hands grounded down on your knees, or if you want to come into a more receptive pose, you can just flip palms up towards the ceiling. Super. And I'm going to ask you to just swap your legs over, because we've probably all come into our most favoured positions. So let's swap the legs over and come to the other side, and notice how that feels. It's going to feel slightly odd, but we're trying to move into a less habituated way of moving and being within our yoga practice. And simply breathe your natural breath. So within our breath awareness practice, we begin to really understand what our tendencies are within the breath, how the breath can create certain ways of being within our body, where it might be an anxious state, a stress state, or something that's dropping into a calmer or restorative place, and how we can almost combat those tendencies to move into anxiety and stress by just listening into the body and the breath. So listening into your breath today, what is that? The texture of your breath, the sensation of your breath within the body. Now I find it really helpful to get some feedback with the hands here. So I invite you to put one hand to the chest and one hand to belly. And you might instantly notice that your breath deepens with that sense of contact and feedback. And if we had another person with us, I would invite you to maybe ask them, if it was a loved one, to put a hand on the back of the body in between the scapula and the shoulder blades, and notice the sense of response within that action. It can be instantly calming. So where is the breath within your body today? Where can you sense the movement? Is there movement in the top hand? Is there movement in the bottom hand? It might be the case that you just feel and sense the movement into the upper chest. Or it might be the sense that there's movement in both regions of the body, including the lower hand and the abdomen. And see if you can encourage a sense of movement in that abdomen area, if there isn't any at the moment. Breathing through our nostrils, first of all, as we do in a lot of the yoga practice, unless it's a specific breathing practice and we want to breathe through our mouths. Noticing the texture of the breath as you inhale, and the sense of the breath exiting the nostrils on the exhale. Super. So let's come into some neck movement to start with. So the seated position is an excellent place to start with the neck. Now, firstly, I want you to think about this long rope coming from the crown chakra, lifting through the spine. So you're grounding with the sitting bones. Both of them are balanced and grounded on the floor beneath you, and you're lifting but settling. So we're going to allow for the left ear to drop down to the left shoulder, easing open into the sternomastoid, feeling into the side of the neck here. Relaxing that shoulder down, as there will be a tendency for that shoulder to want to creep because we want to shorten the distance between A and B. And then let's see how it feels to lift the arm on the left side and just to create a little bit of pressure on the side of the head. How does that feel? How does that change things? And extend your right arm alongside your body. Doesn't matter if the fingers don't quite hit the ground, the hand can hover. We're just lengthening along the side of the neck here. Lovely. Is there a response into the TMJ and the jaw here? And just notice that. Super. Releasing the hand from the head, we're going to rock the chin forwards, lengthening the back of the neck muscles. Touch base with this as you tuck the chin in towards the breastbone. And then roll the right ear over to the right shoulder, noticing how it feels on this side. And there may be a difference. For me, I can really feel a difference here. It feels a lot tighter on the left side today. And then lift that arm up just to settle the hand down. So it's the arm that responds with the ear that's dropping down. Perfect. So yes, that's right. You've got it. Stretching the hand out to the side. And you can move into this space, tilting the jaw forwards and backwards. Just breathing into this area of the body. Lovely. And then removing the hand from the side of the head, we're going to roll the chin forwards and then pop the hands so they're clasped around the back of the head and bring the shape into a flexion, looking down at the feet, coming into an almost scared cat position that we'd normally do in all fours. And inhale, draw the breastbone forwards, create an extension movement, maybe rolling forward into the pelvis. Exhale, come into your C shape, breathing into the back of the spine here. Gaze comes down to the ground. Inhale, lift, and enjoy this almost stretch as you may do in the morning. And exhale, coming to your C shape. Lovely. And then just come back into your neutral. We're going to remove the hands and we're going to lift the arms up overhead on an inhalation and rotate to the left side of the body, coming into an easy twist. That right hand drops down onto knee, left hand may come behind the buttocks or wherever they need to be. Inhale, lift from sitting bones. And exhale, maybe to find a little bit of rotation. And as I mentioned last week, there's not really rotation. We're not designed for rotation in the lumbar. That rotation is going to come about through that midsection of the spine, which is really key. Inhaling and exhaling in your own pace. Inhale the arms up overhead, coming through neutral. Exhale to the other side. Again, that left hand can drop onto knee. Right hand can come behind buttocks. Inhaling and lift. Exhale, settling and rotating through the midsection of the spine. Inhaling and exhaling to rotate. Inhaling, lifting up through both arms. Stretch and reach up to the ceiling. This time we're dropping the left arm down, thinking about the length of the side seam of the body here. Reaching, elongating this side of the body before we come over to the other side. So it's not about how far we can come, but how much space we can create along the side seam of the body and in the intercostal muscles. Super, guys. And then for some of you, with an inhalation, you might want to spiral the heart space up towards the ceiling with a drishti that follows. Breathing into the side of the body here. Lovely. Exhaling and settling. Inhale. Lifting up through both arms here. Exhale, drop the right hand down to the side or the opposing hand. Inhale and reach. Sitting bones grounded. Exhale. Lovely. And then maybe spiraling up towards the ceiling. But thinking about that sitting bone dropping down into the ground. So you can really feel into each of the individual intercostal muscles in between the rib cage. Reaching up through that middle finger. Lovely. And exhale and bring the hands down. Lovely. So I'm just going to demonstrate a few things about the three-part breath. So when we practice the three-part breath, you can practice it in a seated position if you want to watch me. If you're more familiar, you can come down onto the ground in semi-supine. So I'm going to use the Hoberman ball to explain what occurs with the breath. So on our inhalation, we're creating space within the lung cavity, and the intercostal muscles in the rib cage are widening and softening. So this is the element which gets restricted in time, where we become quite rigid and calcified around this region of the body, which is why yoga is so key. So on an inhalation, the cavity widens, and you can inhale with this ball here. Exhale, the cavity reduces. So we're going to breathe in time with the ball here. Inhale. Widening, softening, expanding. Exhale, the cavity reduces. So this, like our asana practice, is affecting the shape within the body, as we do affect the shape within our body when we're practicing yoga. Some people actually breathe in a flipped fashion. This is really common in life, where we think that on an inhalation, we're drawing the belly in, which is counterintuitive, but something that is encouraged with a sense of holding around the belly. And for us females and some males, we do come into that sense of reducing the belly region as much as possible, which actually really affects the sense of efficient breathing. And that can create long-term health issues in life. So know that when you inhale, the diaphragm flattens, the cavity is increased. And when you exhale, that cavity is reduced and the diaphragm actually lifts. And you think of this as like a jellyfish. So the diaphragm acts like a jellyfish. And if you think about the action of a jellyfish moving, there's an undulation. So this is why I'm wearing my leggings today. So we're thinking about this undulation in the diaphragm that is soft and smooth and not rigid and stuck. So we're hoping for that kind of sense of movement. So I invite you to come onto your backs into a semi-supine, making sure that you're as comfortable as can be. And we're coming into constructive rest pose. So we have the knees bent, of course. So we're not pulling onto the pelvis at all. Make sure the feet are lovely and hip width apart and nice and relaxed away from you. Bring the arms down to the sides of the body. And just notice if there's any movement within the body as you breathe. So we'll start with the upper area. So we're going to go through the three-part breath. And it just clarifies what occurs within the body, what the tendencies are, and how we can begin to listen, which is really important. Because we're not trying to change or affect anything in a controlling fashion. We're just easing open to a more authentic way of being, a more relaxed and calm way of being. So bring the hands up towards the clavicular chest. So we're looking at the breastbone. Now both fingers are resting on top of the breastbone here, and I'll sit up to show you. So there's just about an inch or half an inch in between the fingers. See if you can relax the shoulders while you're in this space. And as you inhale, your attention and your intention is going into this region of the body, which we could call the clavicular area of the spine. So it's really just around and underneath the collarbone, actually. Inhale. Notice how that feels. Notice if there's restriction around the belly, and you can allow that restriction to be quite natural because we're beginning to understand ourselves with more clarity. Inhaling. Notice the fingers moving apart. Exhaling, fingers draw in together. Really intend for the movement to come about within the top of the chest. Inhaling, fingers move apart. Exhaling, fingers move together again. Now, have any of you noticed a sense of tension come about in your shoulders breathing in this way? I know I am experiencing that quite instinctively without really doing anything. So we're inhaling. What happens? What are the shoulders doing? Are the shoulders holding anything? Or do they feel relaxed? So this is clavicular breathing, and this is the kind of breathing that is very common. We come into this kind of breathing when we're anxious, but it also can kickstart anxiety and stress to be in this state of being, to be tense around the shoulders. And that obviously, that is connected with a sense of constriction around cranial nerves, which affects our nervous system and digestive processes and really all regions of our being. So if you notice yourself breathing in this way, you might want to encourage yourself to breathe in a more diaphragmatic way. You might know and you might understand that maybe there are certain states of being that creates anxiety. So this is a really interesting thing to do throughout your day. If you use your smartphone or social media, to notice how you're breathing. Notice if there's a tightness. Notice if there's a response within your body. And in more ways than one, you'll probably notice that you have begun to hold your breath or began to breathe in this way. So we're going to creep the fingers now down to the front of the rib cage, around the lovely arch, around that architectural aspect of the body, the spine and the ribs. And we're going to inhale and feel into some space widening around the rib cage. Really over amp this action, and as you exhale, the fingers draw in together again, focusing on this part of the body here. Inhaling, fingers move apart, exhaling, fingers move back together again. Inhaling and exhaling. So just notice how this is within your body, where there's a neutral state that's coming about. How does this feel? Is there more comfort here in breathing this way? What does this remind you of to allow for the ribcage to open and expand in this fashion? Now, this is a really good thing to encourage if you are someone whose ribcage does get rather stuck. This is called thoracic breathing. In the thoracic region of the spine and rib cage, obviously the ribs are partly connected and you have some floating ribs. This is the region that becomes quite rigidified and calcified. And a lot of disciplines actually don't make a lot of allowance for movements in this fashion. So we're going to be doing lots of lateral side bends to move into this area to encourage better thoracic functioning. You've also got the diaphragm around this region of the body, which also can become quite taut and rigidified with the connections between the actual diaphragm and the side ribs. So we'll be trying to ease some flexibility into that region of the body, which is very internal. So I'd like you to draw now your fingers down to the lower abdominal region underneath the belly button, if you've got one, just about 2 inches below. And breathe, focus into this section of the body. So we're familiar with the abdomen. If you've got tight leggings on, really allow for the belly to relax and widen on the inhalation. And sense into the fingers moving together again on the exhalation. Inhale. Fingers move apart. Exhale. Fingers move back together again. Inhaling and exhaling. Now this kind of breath you may find is instantly calming. When you practice in this way, you can drop straight into the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you find yourself stressed at any point, come into this space and breathe in this way is really calming and helpful at any point within your day. Really allowing for the belly to expand and open. And throughout the practice, of course, I will be encouraging this sense of softened abdominal region. And this comes in within lots of different realms of practice that stem from Eastern philosophy. You've got this idea of the hara, which is this center energetic point around the navel within the Zen tradition. And you've got the sense of an energetic region through the Chinese system in this area of the body. And then within yoga, you've got the third chakra, the chakras that join together from the upper body and the lower body and connect, which is connected with our sense of will and power. So it's a really strong energetic region for us humans. And now I'd like you to bring your hand to your chest and your belly and breathe within the 3 parts of the lungs here, not forgetting the back of the lungs, of course, allowing for movement to take place with all regions. So we're allowing for the chest cavity, the thoracic cavity, and the abdominal cavity to sort of open on the inhalation. The hands may move apart from one another. And on the exhale, those hands may draw back together again, the 3-part breath, your diaphragmatic breath. And know that when you breathe with your diaphragm in this way, that the heart is getting a massage, and so is the liver. So we are designed to breathe in this fashion, to keep those organs healthy, which is really quite enlightening if you think about it. Lovely. And we're going to straighten out the legs, move the hands away from the body, and we're going to come into a position called the yin banana. So bringing the arms alongside the head, we're going to creep the legs over to the right, creep the arms out to the right, gather the hand around the wrist on the right side, and maybe even fold that left ankle over right to come into your banana shape, elongating along the side of the body here. And your banana doesn't need to be extremely bent. Think about those bananas that we reject due to the fact of their shape not being quite right. We are going to be all different shapes of bananas here this morning. And you want to feel that you can breathe. You begin to hold your breath, come back to a sense of the breath as you rest here, noticing how this feels within your lumbar. Inhaling, expanding around the rib cage. Belly softens. Exhale, drawing inwards. Inhale. And exhale. And then gathering the arms back to center and the legs back to center, we're going to come to the other side. So this time the legs come over to the left and the arms come over to the left. You can cross over the right foot with the left and grasp hold of the left wrist, coming into your yin banana on the opposing side. Inhaling, rib cage expands, exhaling. And you notice the skeleton drops down into the earth. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Bringing the limbs back to center point. And we're going to lift the legs and the knees up towards the center to come into quite an opposite shape. So you come into your tiny cosmic ball, maybe lifting your gaze up to your knees and coming into this tiny, tiny space, this singularity, Alpanasana, wind relieving pose, and drop the head. Lovely. We're now going to drop the right foot down and explore how it feels to draw the knee in towards the chest. How is that on everyone's lumbars? And then if you want to, you can explore straightening the leg away from the body. So the angle of the leg here is as high as you need it, but you can explore what it feels like to drop the foot towards the floor. If there's any twinging coming about in the lumbar, just lift the foot up towards the ceiling or drop the foot down onto the floor of the mat. Lovely. Breathing, and as you exhale, drawing the knee in. On your next inhale, we're going to swap. So wherever your leg is, if it's straight or dropped to the floor, we're going to swap to the other side. So it may be the case that the foot is down on the mat, or maybe it's floating. Breathing down through the heel. Lovely. Breathing, of course, and not holding the breath. If you're holding the breath, rewind the film, drop the foot to the floor. Super. How does that feel? Lovely. And then drop both feet to the ground to come into thread the needle. So we're going to come into an external rotation with the left leg this time. The knee comes out to the side. We're going to flex the foot to protect the knee, come into the first position of thread the needle, this figure of 4, dropping the hips, allowing for hip flexors to relax, noticing what occurs in your jaw. And then gather the leg towards the body to come into a very nice little position to roll from side to side. Breathing and exhaling into the hip. So your intention is to release in this hip space, which gets so tight. And if you find the jaw has become a little bit more tight with this process, that's absolutely normal. Inhaling and exhaling. Lovely. The longer that you stay with these positions and focus on the breath, the more space you can cultivate, more release, more ease, more stability. It's the stira and the sukham spoken about in the Yoga Sutras from about 500 CE. So this is really old stuff that we're dealing with here. So dropping the foot away from the body, bringing the foot down, and coming into external rotation on the right leg, coming into dorsiflexion of the foot to protect the knee, allow for that rotation to come about, what occurs in your jaw. How does this side differ? And then you can grasp behind the leg if that's available to you, make any modifications necessary. And I really invite you to roll from side to side. As you roll over, you may notice some movement, some variability in sensation, relaxing the jaw and exhaling into the hip here. So your intention is to release. Whether or not physically you can actually exhale into the hip, it's the intention that is set to release that region of the body, and just stick with it. Lovely. And we're going to drop the foot, dropping that foot from the other side, and bring the attention into your pelvis. So bring the hands down by your sides. We're going to come into a very brief pelvic tilt. So grounding the feet into the floor, we're going to roll into the spine a bit here, lifting the tailbone off the ground. And then as we exhale, we're going to roll along the pelvis and create a little lumbar arch. So you can feel some space under the spine there. Exhale, rolling through the pelvis, lifting up tailbone. Inhale, creating a lumbar arch. And obviously you can come into the pelvic diaphragm with that sense of awareness as well if your attention is really honed. Otherwise, we're focusing on the shape change. So as we inhale, lumbar arch is created. Now, do you notice that the head is nodding? So your head may be nodding slightly within this movement, or maybe not. Just notice that without judgment. If your head is nodding, it means that you're completely relaxed all the way up the spine, and there's a sense of reciprocity taking place. But if your head's not nodding, that's absolutely fine. It just means that there is some preventative tension there. Rocking and rolling. And then we're going to take this into our spinal bridge movement, Dvipadapitham. So moving the knees away from the body now. It's a stronger movement as we draw the pelvis off the ground and roll, all the way up the spine. So you may come up through the thoracic, maybe up towards the shoulder blades. And it's really in your own time with complete attention honed onto this process of rolling through the vertebra and drawing the pelvis back down again. Super. The best thing you can do with your spine is this movement. Now I encourage you to lift the arms up overhead as you draw up the next time if that feels good for you. And if there's space for the shoulders and the arms to drop down overhead, that's great. Otherwise, just allow for the arms to stop where they need to stop. And then as you draw the arms back down, the pelvis rolls back down to the floor. Lovely, nice and soft and smooth with the breath. So you may want to focus on one, either the inhale or the exhale as you lift the arms and the pelvis off the ground. Notice as the movement becomes more complex whether you begin to rush and slow it down, and then allow for the shoulders and the pelvis to come back down towards the ground, into earth, maybe creating a little roll in the lumbar. So it's up to you how you take this movement. and how high you take this movement up through the spine. If you do one thing on a regular basis, this would be it, in my opinion. If everyone did this with their spine every day, we're likely to have very little issues. So let's keep our spines nice and mobile and healthy and not move into rigidity. Soft and flowing. The next time you come up into your bridge, you'll notice the glutes engage and you can hold this space. How does it feel to have the hips lifted in this way? And then roll back down into your lovely constructive rest pose. So let's now draw the knees into the body, coming into a flexion, rocking from side to side. How does that feel? And we're going to come into our rock and roll. So some of you may have practiced this. Now, if the rock and roll still feels a bit hairy, scary, just do this very gently and mindfully. And you can roll along the spine. So if there's one thing that we learn within the 6 weeks, let's see if we can get this rocking and rolling movement going. Now, you can use the weight of your legs if you need to. Perfect. So we're really focusing on the spine, being fairly receptive to the floor. So it's this lovely massage movement. Lovely. And as you get really used to this movement, you can bring the legs into it. And the next time we rock and roll, we're going to cross over the shins and move forwards into our all fours. So whether it's flicking the knees out or just coming into a fairly relaxed all fours, coming into that position, your tabletop, spreading the fingers nice and wide so the wrists are beneath the shoulders. The knees are directly under the hips and we're flattening the feet against the ground. Now, for those of you whose feet do not want to flatten against the ground, you can use padding. So if you've got a blanket or a towel, and that prevents any tension from coming about. So you pop that underneath the feet. So using elements of support is a really strong way forwards within yoga practice. Spreading the fingers nice and wide. Let's move into a little bit of clocking the wrists for RSI. So we're going to spiral the fingers out to the side of the mat and lean in. We're not trying to increase any flexibility. We're just trying to move into those tiny muscles that get really tight in the way that we work with our hands nowadays. Keyboards, smartphones and whatnot. Now we're going to spiral the fingers towards the knees. Now, if you don't want to put lots of pressure into the wrists because it just doesn't feel good, you can bring the hips back and work more gently. Lovely. Feeling into the backs of the hands here. How does that feel within your body? Breathing and exploring. And then we're going to swivel those fingers to the midline and creep from side to side. And then there are going to be positions that your body favors compared to other positions. Great, bend those elbows. And then flipping the hands. Now it has to be my favorite. Flipping the hands, spreading between the thumb and the little finger, and moving into the back of the hands there. I mean, it's peculiar, isn't it? How does that feel? Really spread between the thumb and the little finger here. And then flip the hands out to the side. So our first action today, maintaining alignment of the neck by looking between the hands. There's going to be a side-to-side wagging the tail action, a side bend. So I want you to think about left side, so left ear coming to left hip. What is the shortest route towards left ear and left hip? And I would encourage you not to really look at me. See what your body decides is going to be right for you. Actually, you're all doing really well with this. You've got it. So what's happening is you're contracting along one side of the body and elongating along the other side of the body, and then bringing the ear, so the right ear to the right hip. Super. So this action is much older than the flexion and extension movement, evolutionary wise. This is the action that got us out of the sea. And you see fish moving in this way, and lizards. So moving from side to side, attending to that region of the body. And then as we drop the head and the gaze comes up towards the navel, we're going to come into our cat-cow, coming in through our flexion, scared cat. Imagining that someone is lifting through the thoracic around where the bra strap would be, coming into that lovely arching shape. And then as we inhale, we come through neutral, and exhale, I encourage you to come into extension. Bending the elbows and really focusing on this breastbone coming forwards. So we're coming into the thoracic region as opposed to the lumbar. Undulating into these movements with the breath. So the exhalation is great if you're coming into the stronger shape because it creates space when the diaphragm moves up for this movement to take place in the spine. And then exhale and come through extension. So the gaze may come to the front of the mat. So we don't want to lead with the chin. We want to keep the chin tucked in slightly. Coming into your ocean breath, if that's familiar to you. That internal breath, that sounds like the ocean within. Ujjayi. And come into your center point, your neutral. So for some of you, your neutral might need a little bit of a tweak. So if you've got any lumbar issues, think about your tailbone rounding down towards the mat. Gaze between the hands. We're going to come into bird dog, lifting up through the right arm and the left arm. We're going to extend and reach, maintaining the alignment of the pelvis and the spine. Taking this movement into 2 points of contact from 4. Inhale, reach. Exhale, draw limbs in. Coming to the other side. Inhale, reach. So the alignment of the arm and the leg across the body. Sense of navel radiation. Expanse. Inhale and reach through that middle finger and the base of the foot. Lovely. Exhale, bring those hands and knees back down. So we're coming to the other side again. Inhale. Option on your exhalation to draw the elbow and the knee together again. Maybe they touch. Maybe they come somewhere in between. Inhale, reach, expand and open. Exhale, draw knee to elbow together. Inhale, one more time. Absolutely notice how the wrists are feeling. If you need to rest in child's at any point, please feel free to do so. And then bring the limbs in towards one another before grounding down. Inhale, we're going to come to the other side. This is where spreading the fingers really wide is really helpful for the wrists because there may be a sense of dumping into the wrists. They're taking more weight than usual. And exhale and draw inwards. So your knee to elbow. Inhale, reaching through the middle finger and the base of the foot, twinkle the toes. Exhale, elbow to knee, gathering in. Inhale, reaching, exploring this sense of expanse. And exhale and draw back, maybe gathering in. Sweet, lovely. We're going to come into kneeling now, Vajrasana. So first of all, how does kneeling feel within your body with the flattening of the feet? How does that feel in your body? Lovely. You look happy. This is good. We're now going to come into broken toe, Vajrasana. It's either a Marmite favourite or you hate it experience. So we're going to tuck the toes underneath. Use the fingers to draw out those little toes. Now, if you've got long toes, you might find this a bit easier than those of us who have really short toes. Know that you can bring your weight forwards. Now, we're using the exhalation, as you would do if you were giving birth, to really ride the waves of sensation that comes about. So if you feel happy in the position where you've come forwards, you can come back into your sitting up position. It's really about maintaining a sense of control of the sensation with the inhalation and the exhalation. Concentrating on the breath there. Now, if you tighten around the glottis muscles of the throat, just a little bit, can you hear the sound of the breath as it enters the body? It's a bit like Darth Vader, very subtle Darth Vader. And I invite you to bring your hands forwards, and we're going to prep now for a downward dog. So with the toes tucked under, the arms are wide. If you need some space around those shoulders, know that you can spiral the fingers out 30 degrees. We're taking the weight into the legs, and the head is going to hang down freely. The gaze is going to come to the knees or the abdomen as we come up into downward dog. And just know that you can come down into child's pose at any point. So lifting the knees off the ground, gazing at the knees, taking the weight into the thighs, it's quite strong, and then lifting and allowing the gaze to fold. So the head is completely heavy.
And the knees can be bent. You can bend the knees as much as you need to in order for the spine to really unravel here, because this is what dog is about. It's an inversion that allows for the spine to lengthen. And often if we come straight into a straightened legs version, if you play with that, you'll notice that the flexion is going to come back into the lumbar, which we don't really want. So we want to create the best alignment for our bodies in the most useful way. And that's where the intelligence lies within this practice. Breathing, exhaling, and releasing into your dog. Now I want you to explore how this feels against a wall. So bring the knees down, and we don't need to move our mats. Find yourself a wall space, and we're going to come into a place, right, I'm going to do it here. Hopefully you can see online. For those of you who can move, just make sure there's a space where you can see me. So you want there to be enough space in between the wall space and your feet, and you're coming into this right angle shape. And you can explore where this needs to be. So the height of where the socket containment is within the space of the studio is really handy. But if you're at home, you might want to shut a door and use the mid region of the door. So I'm going to come to the side so you can see me here. It's this kind of shape. Now this is your dog shape, but we're doing it in a different position with a different alignment. And you want there to be enough space to feel like you're really reaching into the armpits. And I think that's what's lovely about this. If you spread your fingers to the palms of your hands, if you can, the palms of the hands can flatten against the wall. And maybe encourage that a little bit. Lovely. Now bend the knees and see how that feels. And maybe, Shelley, if you move your feet away from the wall, you'll give yourself some space, because you've actually got lovely long arms. Give those arms lots of space. Now, can you bring yourself into a dog that feels even more expansive along the spine? And if the wrists are feeling unhappy, you can do whatever you need to actually make them feel more happy. So it's pretty strong. And then to come out, you're just going to ease yourself out, bending your knees and coming into an upright. So if you're feeling any sense of lightheadedness after that, I just want you to allow yourself to settle. Does anyone feel a bit lightheaded? No? Good. Super. So we're going to come back onto our knees now and explore downward dog again. So come into your lovely tabletop, creeping the feet, the toes underneath, and lifting up through the legs. So the legs take the weight and the front of the body is resting. Feeling into under the armpits and the serratus anterior, bending the knee slightly. How does that feel now after doing it against the wall? Do you prefer doing it on the floor or on the wall? And let's come down into child's pose just to give ourselves a bit of a rest, especially around the hands and the wrists. Either bringing the forehead down to the mat or bringing the mat up to the forehead with some padding. So using a brick or a block so you can place the forehead down. Bring the hands down by the sides of the legs and breathe into the back of the spine here. Feeling that expanse on the inhalation as the rib cage opens and expands against the thighs. And that drawing inwards with the exhalation. Inhaling. And exhaling. Inhaling. So we kind of imagine that we're like a single organism here. Or even a cell. Expanding as we receive. Drawing inwards as we release. Expanding on the inhalation. Releasing on the exhalation. It can be a really freeing thing to inhabit the sense of being an amoeba or a single organism. And exhaling and releasing. Lovely. And then draw yourself up and out, coming back to tabletop, all fours, finding the alignment. And we're going to release the right leg out to the back of the mat to come into a half plank, extending through the heel. Lovely. Now, if wrists are feeling really tricky, you can come into a tripod or something to protect the wrists here. So that is an option if you need to give your wrists a break. And then come to the other side, maintaining the alignment within the hips, coming into a half plank on the other side. And only if the arms and the wrists and the shoulders are happy and your energy is, raring to go, do then come up into your plank. See how you feel. This kind of low intensity weight bearing is really good to prevent various things, osteoporosis, things like that. How does that feel? Really spread the tips of the fingers down to the mat and draw the legs down very gradually. So we're going to swivel into our gate pose. So this time we're going to swivel through the right leg. So the right leg comes out to the side, but at the same time we bring the left foot out to the side here and open up along the side seam of the body. So you'll want to have the knee and the foot in line. So great, Julia. And then swivel the leg out to the side. Swivel your leg out to the side so the foot flattens, because we're aiming to come into this shape. And as we bring the arm up to the ceiling, your body will make sense of it. Now, can you flatten that back foot along the floor? Because it might be more tricky to have the toes helping. How does that feel? Reaching and releasing up towards the ceiling. Lovely. And think about the side edge of the foot with the leg that's straightened, because you might want to adjust yourself to lift the body up towards the ceiling, so we're coming upright. So make any adjustments necessary to come to an upright position. How does that feel? I know it's making sense of it, first of all. So what do you need to do with your body to come to an upright position? And it's fine if you just want to work with a supported version, but then we're going to reach up with the right version. We're coming into a C shape as the back of the hand, the left hand, comes alongside the straightened leg. Super. And we're not trying to grasp for the straightened leg. We're just experiencing that side bend again. The lateral extension, and we gaze up towards the ceiling if the neck feels happy. Breathing. If you're breathing, or if you stop breathing, come back to the breath. And we're going to open up so we come upright. Well done, guys. And then spiral the hand back down, lifting up towards the ceiling. There we go. And then we make our way back by bringing the hand back into your position next to the other hand, swiveling that leg back in. Super. Lovely. So we're going to come to the other side this time. So I'm going to come over so I don't end up ignoring the screen. So we're swiveling the left leg out to the side, at the same time bringing the straightened right leg out. So you come into this triangular shape. The key is that your foot with the bent knee is facing behind you, where your bottom is facing. And then reach up through the right arm. Breathe along the side seam of the body and notice the contact that is being made between the foot and the floor with the straightened leg. Try and place that foot down. We're going to inhale and come upright into our gate pose, making any adjustments necessary, relaxing the shoulders and the palms face up towards the ceiling to allow for the scapula to come together. And then inhale and reach upwards, first of all, to create that lovely long line before coming over into that lovely C shape. Relaxing the shoulders away from the ears. Excuse the microphone, it's in the way. Inhaling and maybe spiraling breastbone up to ceiling, if that feels comfortable. So can you find a sense of spaciousness and ease within this shape that you inhabit? What can you do to adjust to make things feel a bit more stable and easeful today? Inhaling, lifting those arms so the palms are reaching, or facing rather, the ceiling. And then spiral or windmill the hand back down, bringing the right hand to the left hand, swiveling leg in, and swivel that opposing leg in. Super, great. So we might want to explore, let's see, coming down onto prone, okay? So you've got two options here. You can either go for knees, chest, chin, which is lovely because you've got the support of the knees. It's really good if your wrists are giving you any jip today. So you just come down like this and scoop the body forwards. Otherwise, we're going to come into plank and come through chaturanga, a little bit of challenge here, making sure the wrists are underneath the elbows and the shoulders. You bend the elbows towards the rib cage and scoop the breastbone forwards to come into one of the best positions ever, prone. Bringing the hands in front of the face. Bringing the cheek down, so left cheek first of all. Now this is about release. This is about the sense of containment and support that we experience from the earth. Inhaling and exhaling and releasing the hips, wiggling the hips from side to side. And we're going to swap the cheeks over. So coming to the other side, allowing for the neck to release equally. Sense of balance here. We're going to come into a spinal extension. So bringing the hands underneath the shoulders, we're going to try Cobra Bhujangasana first of all. So bringing them underneath the shoulders and really thinking about the neck here. So the gaze is down at the front of the mat, okay? And I want you to keep that alignment as much as possible. Your full intention will be to keep the neck nice and long. As you inhale, the front of the pelvis and the front of the feet grounds down towards the mat. And we're lifting through those back muscles. Another excellent thing you can do for your body to oppose any sense of kyphosis or that sort of sense of roundedness that comes in as we sit at our desks and on our sofas, lifting through the spine. Well done, guys. And release and rest the hands back down to make that little cushion. Wiggle the hips from side to side to release the back muscles. So the back muscles are working, but we're encouraging the muscles to release straight away rather than hold on to any tension. Okay? So bring those arms or those hands underneath shoulders, gazing down at the front of the mat. And this time as we lift up, you can either hover the hands off the ground if you know that you want to push and you want all your back muscles to do all of the work for you, or you can bring the hands down into little tripods and then create a little bit of encouragement to intensify your extension. Really work within the realms of what feels good for you in your body today. Don't do anything that doesn't feel right. Super. And then as we come back down, bring the hands underneath the shoulders to lift the hips back towards the feet and come into child's pose. Not Bhujangasana. Balasana. There you go, a moment of the blank. Your Balasana, your child's pose. This is our counter pose. So with every spinal extension, we really want to come into a flexion. Breathing into the back of the body. For anyone who has any twinging around hip and the lower back, this child's pose is a really great place to be. It just opens up that region of the body. We generally do have very busy lumbars. There's various reasons for that. And if you're experiencing things like sacroiliac pain and whatnot, this is a good shape for you. Super. So we're going to come back into our tabletop to prepare for dog. If you don't want to come into dog, you can come straight into low lunge by just bringing the hip forward like this. If you want to come into dog for that transition, you can come into your dog and lift the right foot forwards to come into your low lunge, dropping the knee, flattening the foot, and know that you can again create some support by either padding with the mat or with your blanket. So those of you who do have blankets, it's really nice to have that underneath the knees. My knees really don't like being straight into the mat. So you're coming into your low lunge, releasing the hips towards the ground. Lovely. And grounding down through the feet. How does it feel to lift up through the front leg? So that's nice and grounded. Knee directly over the ankle, lift and reach. Think about a beach ball between those hands so the shoulders can relax, jaw can relax. Anjayanasana, lovely. And then bringing the hands down by the side of the foot. We're going to transition, either coming through downward dog or all fours. So you're aiming to bring your foot back in order to swap over to the other side. Bringing the left foot forwards this time, dropping that knee. Coming into this side, making sure the alignment is okay, and just knowing that the main intention here is really to release the hips down in your low lunge. So you might want to explore having more space in between the foot and the knee. Great. How does that feel? And if it feels okay like this, you can scoop the arms up overhead, grounding down through the front foot, coming into your low lunge. Thinking about that beach ball in between the hands, releasing the jaw.
And again, think about the space around the thoracic, not necessarily coming into the lumbar. If there's any lumbar twinging, grounding down through the tailbone, and it prevents that crunchy feeling. Lovely. And then we're going to bring the hands forwards to the front of the feet, framing that area of the body, and bring that back foot towards the front foot to come into Uttanasana. If you're feeling very sort of low blood pressure today, you won't want to stay here for too long, think about bending the knees and folding the rib cage over the knees. Relaxing the head forwards, relax that head. Let the head dangle. Super. And then grasping hold of each bent elbow, we're going to ragdoll up to standing. Bending the knees, grounding down through feet, and unraveling, unfurling, vertebra by vertebra, as we release up into our standing Tadasana. Lovely. Let the shoulders roll down and away. Come into Tadasana. Bring the hands down in front of you. So you're almost swiveling the fronts of the hands forwards. We do that to try and persuade the shoulders away and back. So you almost think about your scapula drawing together, almost slipping together around the back of the spine. So the pelvis is in neutral, neither collapsing into lumbar or flattening the lumbar, somewhere in between. A softness around the knees. So for those of you who are hypermobile, just bend the knees slightly. Notice how that changes things energetically. Thinking about the feet, let's just roll forwards into the toes and roll back into the heels. It's really hot now, so I'm going to turn some heaters off. Does anyone else want their heater turned off? Are you okay? Brilliant. Just me then. So we're in our Tadasana, rolling forwards into the feet and rolling back. Super. We're going to come into brief Vrikasana, bending through the knee of the left leg, coming into your tree, either bringing your foot into the position, which I almost call first position, sounds a bit like ballet, or you can come up to the shin, or you can come up to the thigh, really whatever works for you, maintaining balance here. And it's really nice to press into that leg, just don't press into any knees. If you want to, you can bring the hands to the heart space, pressing the thumb into the sternum. Or indeed, if your balance is fine here, fixing your drishti on a fixed point that's immovable, we're going to reach and release up into our blooming tree as an option. It's really up to you where you're at today. If you drop out, just come in, no problem. Relaxing, breathing into this space. If you can really drop your mind down into your body, create that, the center of gravity. If you bring it lower into the pelvis, it makes it a lot easier in your tree. Drawing the arms down into sternum and dropping foot down into ground. Hands come to the sides. Now we're grounding down to the right. So coming into that position where you can create a more stable support, or coming into the shin, more coming up to the thigh. And you'll notice I'm not encouraging any sort of wrenching of limbs, which you sometimes see in classes, because we're maintaining the alignment of the hips rather than going into asymmetrical movements. Bring the hands to heart center, thumbs pressing into sternum. Working with our balance here, noticing all those micro adjustments within the foot. And if you want to come into your almost beach ball blooming tree with the wide arms and the shoulders relaxing, gazing on that fixed point, somewhere in the midline or somewhere down at the edge of the floor. Breathing, really inhabiting your tree. What kind of tree are you today? Are you the tree that waves in the wind, or the tree that is with strong, stable foundations? Where can you find a sense of stillness? And just notice how it is for you today. Not trying to force anything. Bring the hands down through the midline. And drop the leg down to the side. Super. So we're going to make our way down to the ground now through Malasana, widening the leg stance, knowing that your Malasana is going to be different. All of our Malasanas are different depending on your body. So you might want to come into an external rotation or a more parallel version. But we're aiming to make our way down very gently And you can lift the heels off the ground. It's not like the heels have to be down. Coming into Malasana, lifting up through the sternum, nice and tall, super. And then we're going to pop the sitting bones down. So by whatever means necessary to come into Ardha Matsyendrasana. So your Ardha Matsyendrasana could involve a straight leg on the left side or a bent leg. And it's the shape that looks like half Lord of the Fishes. So we have lots of variation here. If it's the case that the leg is not going to ground the foot down with the alignment that comes over the front of the body here, you bring the foot in front of the hip point. So the key thing here is to make sure that all points of the foot are grounded. So you can, if you want, lengthen that leg to create extra support. So it's really about finding an adjustment that works for you. So Joe, you might prefer having a straightened leg. If you explore it and see how that feels, it's less kind of twisty. How does that feel if you sit upright, grounding the foot down? The foot looks quite happy, but if you're more comfortable, you have the foot in front of the hip, wherever works for you. We're lifting up through the spine, exhaling and rotating into the upper leg. It's a closed twist, half Lord of the Fishes. Inhaling, lifting up through sitting bones. Exhale, rotate. And that right hand just comes behind the buttocks. So we're not leading with the gaze, we're allowing for the chest to lead this action. Inhaling and exhaling to rotate. Inhale, come back to center. I'm going to swap the legs over. So if you've got a straightened leg, straighten the other leg and bend the other to swap it over. For those of you who went for the bent leg underneath, bend it and pop that leg over. I hope that makes sense. So find a place that works for you. I'm going to go for straightened leg to balance out my other side. So we're inhaling, lifting. Exhale, rotate to the closed upper leg. Closed twist here. Inhale. Exhale, release, and rotate. So we're wringing out the spine here. Some of the theory is that you're wringing out the abdominal organs in this way by squeezing them like you'd wring out a tea towel. Inhaling, lift, exhale, rotate. Lovely. Inhale, release forwards and bring the legs out. Bring them in so the knees are tucked in, and then we're going to bring the feet into a little book to let the legs hang out to the sides here. Baddha Konasana, cobbler's pose. And you might want to do a little kind of shuffle. I find shuffling is really helpful in yoga in general in seated positions. And it may be the case that you just want to think about forward fold rather than trying to pull anything into a shape. So you're allowing the spine to just drop over the feet. So the feet are like a little book. You can also bring the hands to the feet. And rather than forcing anything open, we're not doing Iyengar yoga here where lovely Iyengar would come and stand on your legs. Can you imagine what that would do to your knees if someone just tried to force things into pelvises? It's not good. I'm not going to come and stand on you. And just allow for the legs to hang out to the sides, the gaze to look at the toes. And enjoy this little forward fold before we come into an inversion. So last week we came into a supported shoulder stand against the wall. And you have that option again today if you want to, if that felt good. Otherwise, we'll come into a legs up the wall. That's good for anyone who's experiencing menstruation. If you're pregnant, for instance, legs up the wall is better. If you've got high blood pressure, low blood pressure, eye problems or migraines. So if you're experiencing migraines, you don't want to come into a strong inversion because it might just feel worse. So legs up the wall as we come out of our Baddha Konasana. As some of you know, legs up the wall is also legs up the sofa if you're at home. And you straighten the legs against whatever it is, a wall, a door. And if you're on a sofa, you can just relax them down. And that shape isn't dissimilar to the supported shoulder stand that we did. So if you want to come into supported shoulder stand, let's move our mats. So it's always a bit awkward having to move your mat. I'm going to pretend I'm moving my mat because I'm not too fussed about comfort. So you would move your mat so you're facing the wall. Pretend that's my mat. Okay?
And then you pop your hips down. So there's about a foot or two between hips and feet. And then you pop your feet, maybe just underneath the sockets. If you've got longer legs than me, and most of you will have, it may be where the sockets are, but there'll be more security in this region. And then we drag the feet down to lift the hips off the ground. And that's where we're experimenting with this lovely supported version of shoulder stand. So make your choice. Whatever you're doing, you're probably going to be at the wall. If you want to come into the supported shoulder stand, you know to have the feet, so the base of the footprint is against the wall. So yeah, if you just move your mats and swivel, there's a little bit of shifting around, but I think it's worthwhile with these inversions. Lovely. Super. And it's about sort of finding yourself in a position where you can bring your feet against the wall. Lovely. And you want your knees to be bent so the base of the foot makes complete contact with all 4 points of the foot against the wall. So you might even want your buttocks further away from the wall today. Lovely, Shelley. And if it feels like you want to make an adjustment with the feet, whether it's raising the feet. So you've got 2 choices there. You could have your feet on there, Joe, and explore what it feels like from that point, or you can put the feet underneath. But admittedly, that's slightly annoying, isn't it? It's slightly in the way. How does it feel to use the support of the wall as you rock and roll the pelvis off the ground? Similar shape to what we did at the beginning, a pelvic roll and then Dvipadipitham, but in a different plane. So we're utilising the wall space here. Rocking and rolling. And then if you do find the position of the feet helpful, you can work with the shape that you're in. And it's not like you need to come into full shoulder stand. The hips can be closer down to the floor, and you bring the hands to rest on the back of the pelvis. So let me just have a look around. If anyone needs my assistance, just shout. And I know that Julia is very familiar with shoulder stands, so you might, Julia, I see you doing things there. You might be able to just come into your shoulder stand from that position. Do you want some support? I would come over, but I can't.
It's really cold and not very nice.
We need a cushion. I know. Next week, or the week after next, maybe a cushion. Because you know the padding that you've used there, if it was even thicker, that would be really great under your shoulders, and it creates more space for the neck and the head. How are you like that? Does that feel comfortable with the elbows closer in? We're just going to be here very briefly before we come down. How does that feel, Joe? Yeah? If you bring your elbows in slightly more, that's right, and then place them around the back of the pelvis. Super. For extra containment. How does that feel within the upper chest? Yeah? And Shelley? Good. Lovely. And then as we exit, we're going to think about unraveling the spine. And for Julia, thinking about bringing the feet down, just remembering there's a wall there, exiting and allowing for each vertebra to unravel one by one. Super. And then if you draw your knees into this, the belly, the abdomen region, just roll from side to side to create some movement, whether it's a windscreen movement or a rolling movement, whatever feels comfortable for you. And here we're coming into Shavasana. So with no rush at all, either coming back to where your mat was, or finding a position near the wall that works for you, actually. But moving into that space in a relaxed fashion. And when you make your Shavasana up, if you've got that padding, let's use the padding under the head. I do think folded up blankets are like the most masterful thing ever. If you don't have a blanket, you can always use a large beach towel. They're really good for this sort of thing. And as you know, in your Shavasana, it's really about making this space as comfortable as you can. So it could be a cushion under head or the folded blanket. And that is to lengthen the neck. So if you find when you come into your Shavasana that there's an automatic chin reaching up to the ceiling experience, what you need is padding.
And we can create a better alignment with the neck by drawing the hands to the lower reaches of the neck and stroking up past the occipital ridge, which is that lovely connection to the neck, and then stroking up towards the crown of the head and dropping the back of the head down with a sense of weight. And I think that most of you are going to feel that instantly changes things. And then let's explore reaching the legs out away from the body and the femur almost rolling out of the sockets. So the feet flop out to the sides. Now, remembering the pelvis is an extremely heavy bone in the body, so it may be the case that it's much more comfortable to bend the knees here in your Shavasana. And if you had a bolster at home, you can pop the bolster underneath and it just releases the hip flexors. So you may have noticed that a lot of this practice is about release. Allow for the arms to roll out to the sides of the body. And how much can you let go of any muscular effort? We do not need to resist the earth beneath us. It's there to support us. We exist in symbiosis with the earth and our environment. We are not separate, but a part of everything around us. So how much can we release into that? We often in our day-to-day lives really hold ourselves separate with lots of effort. So can we find a more efficient way of being with stability and ease? And sometimes that involves just doing less and trying less.